Good morning, everyone. Before we proceed to each of you reporting, I will be discussing a part of educational philosophies. So let's begin. I want you to first observe the conversation of a teacher and a student in a grade 3 science class. So let me read it for you. The teacher asked, "What is the function of the mouth?" The student answered, "To break the food into smaller pieces." The teacher replied, "Very good. What about the stomach?" The student answered, "To digest the food." The teacher replied, "Very good. Perfect." And the small intestines? The student answered, "To absorb the food nutrients." So, what have you observed in the conversation? Like, what have you observed in the questions rather asked by the teacher? Probably you might be, thinking that the questions asked by the teacher to the student are objective, that belong to low-level questions. So this conversation has something to do with what we will be discussing today. So let's proceed. Let's talk about isolated facts and the banking method. So shown in the conversation from the previous slide, the question and answer proceeding in classes that are common classroom scenarios way back when we were in high school and elementary. Our lessons before are mostly devoted to teachers asking no questions, and we answer those questions with what we memorized the night before. Teachers deposited facts a day before and withdraws them the next day. So this is exactly the perfect example of the banking system that Paulo Freire is very much against, as it does not make the learner reflect and connect with what he or she was taught to real life. So, we have nothing against isolated facts, but isolated facts make no sense, but it becomes meaningful when seen in relation to other facts. Um, this is in relation with are you familiar with the oscillator subsumption theory? The concept there is you have to associate, it is all about association. You have to associate what you have learned, what you have already learned, to the new learning that you have for you to create a meaningful learning. So um, the same with this, we need to make a relation with what we know to the things that, or to the fact that we just knew, we just have new. So and we have seen from the previous slide the conversation that the teacher and the student had, like the teacher was just asking low level questions in which it doesn't make the students reflect, but it should be like the pupil learned that food is broken down into small pieces, which is digested by the stomach and is absorbed by the intestine. To connect the facts, teachers should ask more questions like, what if the food is not chewed? What happens to food in the stomach and the intestine itself? So these questions will help the students see it in the perspective of um, reality. What will happen kung yun na lang mahitabo, dili lang kay kanang kung unsa to ang kanang imuhang gi pamemorize sa ilaha, maulang pud to, but also you have to ask more questions relevant to the things they have learned, to connect it to real life situations. So the next slide is all about the summaries of thoughts of education philosophers on what should be taught and how learners should be taught. So we'll be talking about philosophers. So let's talk about John Locke. I will be discussing John Locke and Herbert Spencer. But before, let me first discuss to you the summaries of the philosophical thoughts of John Locke. So, who is John Locke? John Locke is an English philosopher. He is renowned for the following: how should we educate our children? Who should rule over us? And what we should do to people who have different religious ideas from us. Our discussion regarding John Locke will revolve around these three concepts. But before we proceed, let us first understand what is empiricist educator. Say empiricism. Empiricist education is a philosophical doctrine that holds the view that knowledge is derived from experience. This is in connection with the first item: acquire knowledge about the world through the senses, learning by doing and by interacting with the environment. So, this means that in learning, if you are an empiricist educator, you have you have to give an activities that would involve the senses, that would make the learners learn by through senses. This is especially important for elementary teachers because you are dealing with mga bata, and if you try to look at it with the Edgar Dale cone of experience, it says there that the more senses involved, the better the learning. So if you are an elementary teacher, duwa jud ka sa concrete experience to give the learners, or to give an activities that would involve more a combination of senses to give learners a better learning. So this is especially important to elementary teachers. Simple ideas become more complex through comparison, reflection, and generalization, or the inductive method. If you are, I know for certain that you are familiar with what is inductive method, and um, if you know 4A's, it is an example of inductive method, making simple ideas too complex. So inductive method, meaning from specific to general. So from the activity, you don't directly discuss to them the topic, but instead you let them discover the topic. You let them realize what's the topic all about by providing them the concept by chunk through the activities and through your art of questioning, and then you let the students make their own conclusion and generalization, and then after they have give the generalization, then it's your time to give or to correct what needs to be corrected. So yung ana ang inductive method makes things complicated. So question the long traditional view that knowledge came exclusively from literary sources, particularly the Greek and Latin classics. So John Locke is not fond of poetry and whatsoever from the traditional view of learning. So if you are a traditional teacher, you are more inclined to making your students read and read and read, diba? John Locke is an empiricist educator, which means that he's more onto learning by doing, interacting with the environment, giving the students an authentic activities that would give them the necessary learning that they need, and also involving senses, more on activities. So unlike sa traditional learning, it's more on reading lang jud. Read the classics, the Greek and poetry. So John Locke is not fan of the traditional view of learning. So let's proceed. He opposed divine right of kings theory, which held that the monarch had the right to be an unquestioned and absolute ruler over his subjects. So he don't believe that God created kings. He don't believe that the king has every right in this world to, impose whatever things that comes in their mind, whatever things that they believe is kanang right, dili niya siya pwede questionon. So he don't like divine right of king's theory. So um, he believed that um, aristocrats are not destined by birth to be rulers. People were to establish their own government and select their own political leaders from among themselves. Civic education is necessary. So, mostly before, aristocrats are the leaders, the elite. So, dili siya mo kanana he's against this concept because, makita nato sa iyahang thoughts, the social contract theory, or there is a consensus between or among the people to form the government and to select their leader. This is also, the concept of democracy. Ingon ana siya kanang we are the ones who choose our leaders, who choose to lead us. It's not the aristocrats and it's not the kings. So we choose the people who rule over us. We choose the laws that we will be abiding, and it's not from one person only nga sila ang magbuot what you will do, what you should do, and when and where, ingon ana siya, but it's the people nga to ang giselect to rule over us. And if we think that the people that we just elected is not anymore compatible with what we believe is right, then if the people um, become how should I say this one, if people would act as one to overthrow that elected person, then they have every right in this world to do so because they have been elected. This is democracy. So political order should be based upon a contract between the people and the government. This is the concept of social contract theory. So people should be educated to govern themselves intelligently and responsibly. So we need to educate our learners to become a leader who are intelligent and responsible. So let's talk about the comments. So for John Locke, education is not acquisition of knowledge contained in the great books. It is learners interacting with a concrete experience, comparing and reflecting on the same concrete experience. The learner is an active, not a passive agent of his or her own learning. So as what I have read a while ago, or what I have discussed a while ago, John Locke is into learning by doing. Learning by doing ni si, John Locke, and he is not fan of learning through the great books, the poetry and whatsoever. So he's more inclined to learning by doing. He's inclined to more on, providing the learners with concrete experience, authentic activities, mga yun ana siya. So from the social dimension, education is seeing citizens participate actively and intelligently in establishing their government and in choosing who will govern them from among themselves, because they are convinced that no one person is destined to be a ruler forever. So this is also in connection with his thought regarding the divine king's theory na God did not created kings, but we should be the one to choose who will rule over us. Okay, John Locke is also known for the tabula rasa. I know that you are familiar with what is, tabula rasa. Tabula rasa means the mind of a newborn baby is like a blank sheet, empty, an empty paper. As a teacher, we need to be careful sa kung unsa ato ang ginatulo sa bata, because kung unsa atong ginatulo sa bata mao na ilahang tuuhan nga tama. And maglisod ta when there's also what we call the law of primacy, nga kung unsay pinakauna matunan sa bata mao ang ilahang tuuhan nga tama. And the moment that they grow, they would develop egocentrism, which means that it would be hard for us to correct kung unsa ang tama or kung unsa ang una nila natun-an, because they become egocentric. Kung unsa to unang nila, kung unsa tong una nila natun-an, mao to ilahang kanang tuuhan nga tama, law of primacy. So we have to be very careful, especially for elementary teachers, to teach students right things. Dili ta magpamataka og tudlo sa mga bata, especially in pronunciation, in the concept with regarding the grammar, history. So kinahanglan nato tudluan ang bata og tama, kay para dili sila mamali. So let's proceed. I would just like also to add this quote from John Locke: "The little and almost insensible impressions on our tender infancies have very important and lasting consequence." This means that ang pagtuo nato ba nga kanagong mga experience, pagtuo nato nga walay epekto sa bata, wa ta kabulo pagdako nila, kay dako daay kay siya og consequence. Just like ang bata madunggan ang ilabang ginikanan nga malikas, cursing. So pagdako na nila, we may think na mura na siya og wala, but the moment na mudako na sila, naday na siya dako nga consequence sa bata, na siya kanang dako nga kalabutan sa formation sa bata, sa iyang personality, sa iyang behavior. Also with kanang feel nato pag mag-away ang mga ginikanan, pag makita sa bata nga naay mag-inom, so feel nato mura siya wala epekto sa bata, but the moment that they grow, diraan nato makita ang consequence atong ilahang nakita nga ato ang pagtuo dili makaapekto sa ilaha. So we have to be very careful with what we are teaching sa ato ang estudyante, because especially in the things that we are saying, ang mga kanagong dapat kanang dili ta nila makita ang kanagong how should I say this one, kanagong magsinggit-singgit, because the moment that they grow, na siya kuan impact sa ila. So we as a teacher, we are a role model, so kinahanglan nato na siya gampanan. So let's proceed to Herbert Spencer. So Herbert Spencer, who is Herbert Spencer? Do you know that Herbert Spencer wasn't able to have formal education until he turned 30? No, wala siya ka eskwela before niabot siya og 30 dira siya kasugod og eskwela, formal education, before pa siya naka eskwela og formal education. Susama anang inyuha, formal education. So Herbert Spencer is a utilitarian educator, which means that when we say of utilitarianism, it means that teaching what is only useful and important. So makita nato ang pagka-utilitarian ni Herbert Spencer sa iyahang mga concept and philosophy sa kinabuhi. So let's proceed. Sa first item, Spencer's concept of survival of the fittest means that human development had gone through an evolutionary series of stages, from the simple to the complex, and from the uniform to the more specialized kind of activity. So Spencer believed that we are nagsugod ang tanan butang sa simple hantod nagkalisod ang mga butang. So, di ba, survival of the fittest, as we survive, naay ka ng kalahian, naay changes sa to for us to cope with the environment. Survival of the fittest. For us to be able to survive with the nature, kinahanglan nga mo-cope ta sa tuang environment. So, social development had taken place according to an evolutionary process by which simple, homogeneous societies had evolved to more complex societal systems characterized with humanistic and classical education. So, before, we just have, one kind of societies, and then nag-evolve ato ang mga societies that it becomes complex. So, he was not inclined to rote learning. Schooling must be related to life and to the activities needed to earn a living. This shows, diba, Herbert Spencer wasn't able to have formal education until he turned 30. So, he is more onto teaching with what is important. Kung unsa importante mao ang dapat itudo nato sa mga bata. He is not into rote learning, pamemorize lang nato sa ila, memorizing sa unang panahon, the traditional way of learning. They are just the teachers are giving students things to memorize, and then pagkaugma mag-oral kung sa tilang memorize aningon ana lang. Before, more on definition, more on memorization. But in Herbert Spencer's thought on education, we need to teach students with things related to life, and important things needed for us to survive. So like things like chemistry, physics, biology, psychology. These are what do you call this one, subjects or program nga consider siyang importante kayo as for us to survive. So, curriculum must be arranged according to their contribution to human survival and progress. Science and other subjects that sustain human life and prosperity should have curricular priority since it aids in the performance of life activities. This is also in connection with the previous item. Curriculum must be arranged according to their contribution to human survival and progress. So, kinahanglan nga we need more on, dapat mag-focus ta more on the more on like subjects like science, mathematics, like biology, physics, because these kind of subjects leads to inventions that helps us survive daily set, as every day kanang mga invention nato, these are products of science. So iyang belief nga kanang dapat mas ganito importansya ang mga subject nga susama sa science. So individual competition leads to social progress. He who is fittest survives, rather. So this shows his concept of survival of the fittest. If you are fit, then you will be rewarded accordingly. Then if you are unfit, then you will face the consequences of your unfitness. So, industrialized society require vocational and professional education based on scientific and practical objectives rather than on the very general education goals associated with humanistic and classical education. So, curriculum should emphasize the practical, utilitarian, and scientific subjects that help humankind master the environment. As what I have discussed earlier, that Herbert Spencer is more on subjects that are necessary for us to cope with the environment, that would help us cope with the changing world, like science, like physics, mathematics. These are important subjects that he believes nga kinahanglan nato emphasis sa ato ang curriculum. So instead, in the first item, instead of teaching general education, we need to be more specific. Specific ta. This is especially to medicine. Kini, to survive in a complex society, Spencer favors specialized education over that of general education. We are in need of social engineers who can combine harmoniously the findings of specialized knowledge. This is particularly true in the field of medicine, diba? If you are into general medicine lang, di ba, before sila na specialization mo, undergo sila og special general medicine lang, but lahi raman jud to nga pag nakay specialization, like you are cardiologist o unsa pa na klase nga mga kuan, you are imong specialty kay sa heart, sa kidney, sa surgery, or sa asa ba sa bone or sa dugo. So kinahanglan, it is very important that kinahanglan daw nga naatay specialization for us to have one to narrow down our focus and to excel ana to ang specialize. So the expert who concentrates on a limited field is useful, but if he loses sight of the interdependence of things, he becomes a man who knows more and more about less and less. We must be warned of the deadly peril of over-specialism. Of course, we do not prefer the other extreme, the superficial person who knows less and less about more and more. So, even though he believes in specialization, but we shouldn't focus more onto that. Also, we have to consider general education, but also kinahanglan nato focus ang specialization. So let's talk about the Spencer survival of the fittest. He who is fittest survives. Individual competition leads to social progress. The competition in class is what advocates of whole child approach and social emotional learning. Atmosphere negate the whole child approach. A powerful tool for self-focused schools has as tenets: each student learns in an environment that is physically and emotionally safe for students and adults, and each student has access to personalized learning and is supported by qualified, caring adults. So, when we say of survival of the fittest, say for example sa inyuha, it is way back when we were still studying, we also try to make fun of the survival of the fittest because out from duha ka section tag 40 ka pinamuang section, but gamay na lang jud kaayo ang nangabilin sa mua because most of them are physically tired and emotionally tired. Kanang mag dili na nila makaya ang kuan ba, ang kanagong kalisod na nila makaya ang kanang we are education, we are into I was before an education student, and being an education student was not easy, rather, because the teachers or professors grabe makahatag, amo na siyang gina-term as bagyong project. So sometimes makauna-una ta nga muundang because sa kalisod, but we have to remember that we are in the field of the academic, the academe nga pag makagraduate ta, importante kay ato ang role society because we are the one teaching. And how will we teach kung kita mismo dili ta kabalo in the field? Naay mga butang nga wala nato nahibaw-an, and we need to learn it on our own. So if ever sa pag-eskwela pa lang ninyo wala na mo gisala, wala na mo tudluan, and wala na mo tudluan how to become an independent learner, the moment nga naa mo sa field, dili gyapon mo makasurvive. There are some nga mag-suicide because of the pressure sa trabaho. And so, if you are not fit to become a teacher, then, ang tendency jud nimo, muundang or mubalis na lang sa lahi nga program. So, if you really want to become a teacher, then you have to withstand the complexity of this course, the complexity of the nature of its job. We are more on paperwork this time, not just paperworks and other courses nga they're only focused on paperworks, but kita wala natay paperworks, and as well as napatay mga estudyante nga kinahanglan to i-manage different personality everyday, lahi-lahi nga problema imuhang ma-discover. So kinahanglan jud nga if if you graduate from this program, kinahanglan nga fit ka to become an educator, because an educator is not an easy job. You have to be physically and emotionally strong, because in the field you will meet lots of struggles and adversity, and if you are unfit, then na ay tendency nga mo give up ka. And so you should learn from this Herbert Spencer survival of the fittest nga you try to reflect if fit ba mo nga mahimong teacher, because ang trabaho sa teacher dili siya sayon. You learn on your own. Kinahanglan nga kanang you are not just a teacher, but you are also an accountant, you are also a guidance counselor, and whatsoever padiraa yung ang teacher. So you have to withstand the complexity of this program. I hope that you have understood my discussion regarding a part of only a part of the philosophical the educational philosophies in or the philosophers, the thoughts of the philosophers. So I hope that you have learned something from my discussion. So I will be giving the evaluation for this down sa link sa description. I'll be giving the evaluation link, so don't procrastinate to take the link. Take it now, and thank you for listening.